Welcome to the Pro Wrestling with Wisdom show. I'm your host, Nicholas. This is the fifth episode. This week's episode is going to be a little different. Normally, I would talk about the news that has been going on in professional wrestling recently. I'm not going to be doing that this week because, A, the professional wrestling news has not been as big as it normally would be. And this week, I want to honor a professional wrestler who was one of the most underrated parts of the Attitude Era, in my opinion. And that would be Crash Holly, aka Mike Lockwood. Uh, on on November 6, 2003, we lost Crash Holly. And today is actually the 22-year anniversary of his death. And it's crazy to think about A, how fast time has gone, and B, what's tragic about this too, with Mike Lockwood, he passed away at such a young age, uh, and it was utterly devastating when hearing the news about Crash Holly's death. I wasn't alive there, but he was such a notable figure. Like him going at 32 years old is just, I mean, wrestling deaths, there's plenty of wrestling deaths like go at a very young age, but this one happened so suddenly that many were shocked. And with today being the 22-year anniversary, I wanted to talk a little about Crash Holly, go into some details about him. My favorite parts about Crash Holly, his sad demise, and how he got in. So I'm gonna go from the beginning to the end. So let's do it. So Crash Holly, aka Mike Lockwood, he was born in San Francisco in 1971, and at a very young age, he was actually a very big professional wrestling fan. Like he was a fan of it. And when looking up some of his more notable wrestling figures that he looked up to and that he wanted to wrestle with, the name that often comes to mind is Brady Boone. And he was very, very big into his matches. It's Brady Boone, if you don't know, he used to wrestle as Battle Cat, Fire Cat, Brady Boone, Lynx, the Masked Fire Cat. Like he was a very notable wrestler, mainly in the old Japan pro wrestling scene. I mean, he did have a few stints in the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, and the independent circuit, but that was a wrestler that he looked up to. And on a side note here with Brady Boone, he has had another tragic story where he also passed away at the age of 40. This was in December where he was driving home to a WCW taping. He was just signed to WCW at the time. He was about to make his return. And he died in an automobile accident. And it was very tragic what happened there. But Brady Boone was a very, very big influence on Mike Lockwood, and Lockwood decided to enter the independent circuit and start to wrestle. And he actually started to wrestle in 1997 in the independent scene, and he would be the traveling figure. I mean, he would wrestle like as the Leprechaun, the Green Ghost, Johnny Pearson, etc. He would go through various sorts of names in the independent scene, and he was starting to build a following in '97. And with Crash Holly, he was a pretty solid worker during his time. And in the '80s to '98, when he joined WWF, he was building himself up, learning the business. Um, he actually joined ECW in '97, where it was actually Taz who viewed a tape between a match he had. I believe it was a match between him and Michael Modeste, if I remember correctly, who wrestled as La Migra, Private Pain. And after watching that match, Taz wanted to bring him into ECW, so he gave him a recommendation, and he basically got a tryout match into ECW. And if it wasn't for Taz, who knows if he would even get a shot in professional wrestling, but he would often have untelevised matches. He didn't last too long there, and I think it's fascinating too that he also received a tryout match against Vic Grimes as well, and they just didn't offer him the opportunity. And after an excellent outing he had in ECW, it attracted the attention of the WWE. WWF, and they decided to sign him to a contract, and they mainly put him on like their developmental scene for I think the first year of his deal. I mean, I do know we had a few matches with the Power Pro Wrestling, which was basically their developmental promotion at the time. Uh, the thing that I find interesting about Power Pro Wrestling, that was there were so many notable names that wrestled in that business. I mean, Kurt Angle wrestled there in '99. A lot of the Anoa'i, Rosie, and Umaga wrestled there. Uh, there were a lot of notable names, like Terry Gordy's. Terry Gordy used to wrestle there. Even his son wrestled there. Like there were a lot of names that wrestled in that promotion, and it was more of a developmental scene for WWE to develop the future there. It went out of business in 2001, but it's sort of basically what their version of like an NXT was, except for it being televised. It wasn't. Maybe FCW as well. I mean, a place for him to learn, and he was one of the standouts there. And he would also get sent over to Mexico from time to time as well for their Lucha Libre shows, because the WWF had a partnership with Lucha Libre, AAA as well. And he would often go there. And it was actually in 1999 where he debuted in WWE. He actually was introduced by fans as basically Hardcore Holly, or at the time he was Bob Holly's cousin, where Crash was, and they basically were the Holly cousins at the time. And this was where they took the gimmick of being super heavyweights, and that's why you saw Crash Holly bring out the weighting scale to the matches, claiming to be super heavyweights, over 400 each, and just basically to weigh in before every matches. I don't know why. Like, Holly was a smaller type wrestler, but him just carrying the the weighting scale around him to the ring is just, it really made him stand out. And they would often have these matches. They were mainly a tag team there. Him and Bob Holly, they would always they would have matches with APA, Rock, and Mankind. They even had a notable run. This was probably the peak of Crash Holly's career in the hardcore division. This was when I think that this was when the 24/7 thing was created, because there is no 24/7 rule without hardcore. I'm sorry, Crash Holly. He was the one that really created the 24/7, where he would become the hardcore champion and he would defend the belt 24/7. I'm going to do it everywhere and anywhere. And there were some crazy areas where Crash Holly would actually wrestle. I mean, airports, circuses, fun houses, hotel rooms, backstage, it's crazy too. And I remember one of the funniest parts too, because everyone was going after the hardcore championship belt to take it from Crash. There was one time where one of the Godfathers, the Godfather, if you don't know who he also wrestled, was Papa Shanto. He would always bring these women in there. He would call them his hoes. And I find it crazy too that in the record books for the 24/7 championship, the hardcore belt, one of the Godfather hoes pinned Crash Holly to take the belt off. I remembered at the time that happening, and it was so funny. Oh my God. Like, there were so many memorable moments with Crash Holly as the champion. And even though he was often pinned, he would regain the belt. And I remembered even like road agents like Briscoe and Patterson would take the belt from him as well. But it just worked. The comedy stuff really worked for Crash Holly. He was a perfect fit in the hardcore division. And, he would even appear in Puerto Rico at the time, holding the IWA Hardcore Championship as well in 2001. And, he was great in those comedy roles in the hardcore matches. And when it came to the Holly faction, this is when Molly Holly got brought in, and the new Holly faction was basically feuding with the Dudley Boys, where the Hollies, Crash, and Hardcore would go after the Dudleys and Spike Dudley. And it would lead to all 6 participants engaging in a feud. And the reason why Molly Holly and Spike Dudley had that relationship was because Crash Holly recommended it, and it turned into a tremendous feud between the two. And then it was mainly switched over to Heat for the light heavyweight championship, and it was a short-lived run with him as the light heavyweight champion. But once the hardcore division like fell apart, and they transitioned him into the cruiserweight division and the light heavyweight championship, right? Like, it just didn't fit. Once the hardcore division ended in WWE, he was done. I mean, he was a good worker, but like WWE didn't want to push him. He was never going to be the world champion in in that that entire company. And it also didn't help during like the brand splits. Crash was basically one to Raw, but he also shifted to SmackDown. He was on and off Raw and SmackDown like crazy. And I mean, he was mainly enhancement talent. I mean, he had 3-minute warning. Like, he was used to go put the 3-minute warning faction up. I mean, he would always go from Raw to SmackDown, try to be with Bob Holly, but he was mainly in the cruiserweight division, and he just seemed lost. He really did. And there was even a time when Crash suffered an injury. I think he was out for 3 months, if I remember correctly. He was either an injury or he was mainly on the house shows. And he then became, this is when WWF rebranded into WWE, and he went back to Raw, and then SmackDown to Raw. And then he actually joined Matt Hardy's faction, the Mattitude Followers. This is when WWE was trying to push Jeff Hardy and split Matt Hardy on his own. And Matt Hardy had Shannon Moore as well on his side, and trying to grow their faction together. Crash was basically Moore's apprentice, and it never really worked. I mean, I felt like these three were good workers, but them coming together for being a Magnitude Followers, it really didn't lead much. And I don't even think that he lasted that long in the Magnitude faction. I remembered at around the point where he joined the faction, I think it was at around either April time or May time. He was gone like a few months later. Like on June 30th, 2003, he got released from WWE, which was a mutual parting of the ways because Crash, he was not happy with how he was utilized and creative, and he was apparently very vocal about his unhappiness. I remembered that Bruce Pritchard would even share that he was a hard worker, but he had difficulty when creative didn't have anything with him, and would seek answers as to why. And the constant meddling into creative of why am I not being used at that time resulted in him being released. And almost everyone who worked with Crash had nothing but good things to say about him. And after that, he mainly was in the independent circuit in 2003. June 2000. What's crazy to think about is on June 30th, 2003, he got released. And not a few months later, he would pass in November 6, 2003. I mean, he was in the independent scene, and actually the NWA/TNA at the time, they took a chance on him. They had him booked for a few shows as Mad Mikey, and he basically cut promos of things that like made him mad, and it was a very, very brief stint. I don't even think he lasted longer than 3 months in the company, and he would wrestle in tag matches. He would wrestle in singles matches, and it was just really, really telling that TNA didn't really have anything for him as well. And you go do independent shows, and it was just not a good spot for him. And the last match he ever had was in November 1st. It was actually a match where Mad Mikey was teaming with Rory Fox, and he defeated Quinton Lee in the Human Time Bomb. And what's fascinating too, in his final match, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was the special guest referee. It was with Heartland Wrestling Association. Heartland Wrestling Association, it's no longer a thing. It was defunct in 2015. But in 2003, they had him booked for shows. And what I find crazy too is Crash Holly, not a week later, would pass away. He actually passed away. He was staying at Stevie Richards' house. If you don't know Stevie Richard, he also is a professional wrestler. I actually like him as a analyst and YouTuber as well. I often check out his YouTube channel, and look, he gets in a lot of hot water with some of the stuff he says. I don't know why. I actually find his thoughts and his opinions to be mindful. And yes, he wasn't the biggest star in the company, but he is a very smart guy. I love what he does, and he tells it as it is. And he's not a piece of work and a liar like people like Conan and Disco Inferno. I mean, they say some wild things on that show. But Crash Holly stayed with Stevie Richards in his house. What's crazy too is when they discovered he had passed away. He was found with a pool of vomit around his face. There were empty bottles of prescription drugs. I mean, Crash had a drug issue as well in WWE, and apparently he also consumed like a bottle of alcohol. So he likely was mixing the pills with alcohol, which is an insane thing for anyone to do. But he clearly was an addict, and he was taking the prescription pills with the alcohol. I don't understand why you would want to mix like that. And I think it's the same way Sensational Sherry Martel passed away due to the mixture of the drugs. And apparently, I was doing some research, and they ruled his death as a suicide, because at that time he was in the middle of a divorce from his wife. They actually had separated at around July, not too long after he had left WWE. Even though he left in April, at that time his marriage was failing. And here's a fascinating fact I found out about his wife, Wheeler. What I found out about his wife is they met in Unforgiven 1999, and she was actually one of the people that escorted Mark Henry to the ring. And it was at that show where they met, and eventually they got married. And I believe they did have a kid. I believe it was a daughter, if I remember correctly. But both of them met and had a relationship. And at the time, they were having some marital issues. And after getting the divorce, he was apparently depressed. And with all the drug bottles surrounding him and the alcohol, it was ruled that he passed away via suicide, which is absolutely sad. And one other thing I forgot to mention as well, he also opened his own wrestling school, the Crash Holly School of Professional Wrestling in North Carolina, which is sort of where his wife grew up, and it was just devastating because Crash Holly was a great worker. He was a notable part in the Attitude Era in the hardcore scene. I mean, he wasn't like a big Stone Cold Steve Austin level star, but he was a name that a lot of fans at that time remembered. And the peak of the hardcore era was him as champion. And he was actually really close to Molly Holly, who would actually have an autobiographical DVD that came out with her, and she actually donated a portion of the sales profit to his daughter's education fund. So which I find awesome. I mean, Molly Holly, she's an amazing person. I find crazy as well. His daughter was 7 years old at the time, so like she lost her daughter at the age of 7 years old, and it absolutely is devastating. to hear that. I mean, he's currently buried in China Grove, North Carolina, and I mean, look, he was a great worker. He was notable, but he had his issues, and I find it crazy too that even though he passed away 22 years ago, we're still talking about him to this very day. And it's a tragic story what happened to Crash Holly. And I often thought I did mention Dark Side of the Ring topics they should cover. If they do an episode on Crash Holly, Mike Lockwood, that would definitely fit the bill for Dark Side of the Ring. And if they could get people, I definitely hope they could get Stevie Richards. Of course, he passed at his house. I don't know if he's going to agree to it, but I think him being involved would definitely do well. I don't know what Molly Holly's deal is. I think she's under if I remember correctly, I believe she's still under a WWE contract, if I remember correctly. And I think it would be hard to get her to a deal. I believe she's either a trainer or I can't remember what she's doing. I believe she's still with WWE, and it'll probably be harder to get her. I wonder if you could get Hardcore Holly to do an episode, but then again, Hardcore Holly is another one you could do an episode on separately about his bullying and how stiff he was in the ring. But yeah, I mean, I will forever remember Mike Lockwood. Some of the comedy stuff he did during the Attitude Era was wonderful. A really, really underrated worker, and I do wonder if he ever did get that push from WWE or if he was used better, what he would turn into, or what if he was able to stay in TNA and get his life together and kick his habits drug-wise. But unfortunately, we'll never know. Rest in peace to Mr. Lockwood. Thoughts and prayers go out to his family. But yeah, that's my quick 20-something minute episode on remembering Mike Lockwood, aka Crash Holly. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to keep doing these type of videos as well. I'll be back next week to do more content. Don't forget to hit the like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the bell for notifications. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll catch you next time. Take care, guys.